see them filming and including in the Netflix series a private text message. OK, they don't reveal the contents, but clearly a negative text message that William...
Absolutely. What we're really now seeing is that both of them, having posed as the victim for so long, are really the aggressors. And what I really thought at the end of it as well was this, which I think is a very, very pertinent point. When they came across for the Queen's funeral, and there was that amazing scene outside the castle of meeting the well-wishers in the walk, there was always talk of reconciliation. Mm-hmm. Charles and William and Kate go one side, Harry and Meghan the other side, smiling and all the rest of it. But at that time, William didn't know that Harry and Meghan had already recorded their poison for Netflix. It was already edited. All the stuff that we heard today about Charles lying, about William screaming and shouting, was in the can, was being edited. And they duplicitly did not reveal what they were going to do. Now, Harry's got form on that, because he did exactly the same at Prince Philip's funeral when he recorded that whole thing about how his father was responsible for his mental breakdown.
All right, this is getting really interesting. Royal commentator Tom Bower is now claiming it's extraordinary how the narratives around Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are starting to unravel. That's a strong statement. So what does he actually mean by that? And is there any real evidence behind it? Or is this just another opinion adding fuel to the fire? Let's break it down. So according to Tom Bower, the version of events that Harry and Meghan have shared publicly, through interviews, documentaries, and Harry's memoir, is beginning to face more scrutiny. He suggests that inconsistencies, contradictions, or differing accounts are causing people to question parts of their story. Now, to be clear, Bower is offering an interpretation here, not presenting a single definitive piece of proof. But his argument is that over time, as more information and perspectives come out, the overall narrative becomes harder to sustain without challenges.
And he stood in the St. George's Chapel, knowing that he'd done his family down in the Apple broadcast, the armchair broadcast, and didn't reveal it. So he's as duplicitous as Meghan, but it's worse, because she's an actress. She's got no stake in this country. But Harry, a former army officer, betraying the army, his country, his family, his father, dumping on the king, the future king too, and also on his grandmother, that is extraordinary. I mean, Diana would be shocked. The one thing Diana didn't do was be so duplicitous, so dishonest.
Well, no, and Diana made it clear, didn't she? Her criticism was always reserved for Charles.
Absolutely.
Not for the Queen, not for the institution of monarchy itself.
But Harry has actually gone out of his way to undermine everything that we stand for. He's gone out of his way to undermine the family, the institution, everything. And I think Diana, well, I know, we all know, Diana would be shocked that we're sitting here today discussing her son as an outright liar, as a man who conspired with Meghan in the 6 hours of perfidy. You know, for example, the whole description she does of the Portland hospital, the birth, that was completely fabricated. We all know the first interview was given to CBS. We all know that she never intended to go to the Portland hospital. She intended to have the baby at home. We know that they deceived the public about the birth data and time of the whole event. So, and also, you know, even it goes down to the lawyer saying that in that statement, when they have that long attack on the Mail, which is astonishing, that Meghan, we know she lied in her statement, that she says that she didn't cooperate with Omid Scobie, and she said that she didn't consult anyone writing the letter to her father. That was in a sworn written statement. That was untrue. She then admits that it was untrue. But her lawyer says Meghan didn't lie. Well, extraordinary how the whole thing is unraveling.
And yet they don't produce any evidence.
None at all.
Of the claims that they have made against the royal family. For example, William being a bully. For example, this idea that the royal family was conspiring with the press to bring them down. Where is the evidence?
It's always they. They never name them, except they did name Jason Knauf, the man who in the end exposed Meghan's lies, and of course they're furious with him. So the whole series ends with that statement on the screen which says Knauf is the liar, not us. And that is the level they've sunk to. But I also think, you know, Netflix have a lot to answer for. if an established broadcaster in Britain or America produced that sort of succession, 6 hours of lies, they would be absolutely hounded out.
No balance.
Not in no balance, no truth, no criteria. I mean, what is the criteria? It is just propaganda. You know, Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propagandist, would look with real awe at what the Sussexes and Netflix have achieved.
Because what they've done quite cleverly, right, especially for an international audience, because I know this is landing well, shockingly, outside of the UK. What they've done very cleverly is they use their friends, their lawyer, academics who have always backed their side of the argument to seem to give a balanced picture. It's as if you are watching a balanced documentary, but in fact, all of those people are stooges. They are plants for Harry and Meghan. I mean, this friend, Lucy...
Here, the makeup is never smeared. Everything is so rehearsed.
We found that clip of her, didn't she, saying that one of her great talents is that she can cry on cue out of her left eye.
And you know, the whole construction of her father, that man who in the end was abandoned by Meghan for months before the wedding, totally left to his own devices, isolated, really felt abandoned. That's why he sold the photographs, because he felt so besmirched.
Let's zoom out for a second. Harry and Meghan have told their story across multiple platforms. The Oprah interview, the Netflix docuseries, Harry's memoir Spare. Each of these added new details, new claims, and new context. But when you tell a long, evolving story across different formats, people are naturally going to compare everything. And when small differences appear, even if they're minor, they can get amplified. That's often what commentators like Bauer focus on. Here's where it gets complicated. Supporters of Harry and Meghan argue that they're simply sharing their lived experiences, something that can naturally evolve as they reflect and open up over time. Critics, on the other hand, see those changes as inconsistencies. So you end up with two very different interpretations. One side sees honesty and vulnerability. The other sees shifting narratives. And Bauer clearly falls into the second camp.
To actually say he was the reason why the whole thing exploded, why they had to leave in Britain. And then, of course, Harry's saying, of course, Meghan's got no father. And now he doesn't have a father. They really are.
It's despicable. And I know you've obviously done this, as have I. You know, you go and you speak to the Markles, you get to understand them. But actually, you can look at Meghan's own public statements. I mean, she stood up at the United Nations. That was her most famous appearance before meeting Harry. And she praised Thomas Markle. She said he was a great father who instilled the values in her that allowed her to challenge that soap company, which she talks about all the time. She credited that to... Well, of course
Absolutely.
It was. But the point is, she credited her father. And now she's sort of trying to say, oh, yeah, he was a good dad, but I actually felt really lonely as a kid.
But I think what is also so terrible is that Harry never went to see the father.
Oh.
And why not? Because Meghan was ashamed of him. Because Meghan was already constructing a whole new narrative to exclude the father. And in that, the father, Thomas Markle, blames Doria. Yeah. And Doria plays a really sinister role in this whole story. Because remember, for 10 years in Meghan's life, from the age of 5 to 18, more than 10 years, she disappeared.
But we never hear about that.
We never hear. And she says at one stage, I went to every one of Meghan's plays at school. Of course she didn't. She was never there.
No, and also, Thomas Markle paid for the university fees.
And the school fees, and the car, and the home, and the blackout, he paid for everything, the petrol, everything.
So, Tom, look, can we look ahead? Because, of course, this isn't the end. You know, it's only a couple of weeks until we're likely to get the first leak of Spare, the Harry autobiography. Now, I hear lots of people, I disagree with them, but I hear lots of people saying, oh, what more damage can he do? But I think you think this book could be even worse.
Well, I think what they've had to do is they've had to stage and restrict what's in Netflix so they've got something new to sell the book, because there's £20 million at least. Well, I think there's definitely got to be something about Camilla. She's escaped so far. I think there's
we know they don't like her.
We know we don't like her, and there's the whole race thing there. I think there's more about King Charles, the relationship with his father, the relationship between father and mother. I think there's a lot more about the whole institutions of British government. And I think something of the Queen as well. I mean, what he said about the Queen today was shocking, that she sat there likes of at the Sandringham Summit not saying anything. But what was terrible, he said about the Queen, and he'd done about the Queen, is that he knew that he dumped on his grandmother when he was burying her in Windsor. And that is the level of their duplicity. That is unforgivable of Harry to have done that.
I think it's completely unforgivable, and actually he's trying to undo the late Queen's life work.
As he has with about the Commonwealth, absolutely.
No, indeed. Tom Bauer.
Now, let's challenge that idea for a moment. Is their story actually unraveling? Or is it just being examined more closely because of how public it is? Because the more visible a story becomes, the more people analyze it, from journalists to commentators to the public. And with that level of attention, even small details can turn into big talking points. So what Bauer calls unraveling, others might call intense scrutiny. If this trend continues, we'll probably see more of the same. More analysis, more counterclaims, more debate over what's accurate and what isn't. And unless Harry and Meghan directly address specific criticisms, which they rarely do in real time, the speculation will keep growing. At the end of the day, this comes down to perspective. Tom Bauer says the story is unraveling. Others say it's simply being challenged, as any high-profile story would be. But one thing's certain. This conversation isn't going away anytime soon. What do you think? Is this narrative falling apart or just being picked apart? Drop your thoughts in the comments and I'll see you in the next video.